The stars over the Andurian expanse burned cold and silent, a tapestry of distant fires in the black. In the heart of this quiet chaos, the Virellan Confederacy's command center hovered like a glassy sentinel, reflecting the pale light of Solaris, Prime's shattered moon. Inside, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Admiral Saren paced the length of the command chamber, eyes flicking from holoscreens to a trembling assembly of diplomats and military officers. The message had come in hours ago, a desperate, near-suicidal call for aid from the outer systems. 2 entire star systems swallowed overnight, consumed by an enemy that no one alive had ever seen before. Drakhi swarm, the intelligence officer said grimly, voice barely above a whisper. A synthetic life form, not biological in any conventional sense. They replicate by consuming and rewriting DNA. Their advance is unstoppable. The room went still. We have sent messages to every allied power in the compact, Saren continued, voice steadier now, and received only silence or polite refusal. From the back, a junior officer cleared his throat. Except Earth. All heads turned. Earth. For centuries, humanity had been the galaxy's enigma. Primal, unruly, barely accepted into the compact, they were often dismissed as a quaint but dangerous backwater, more prone to internal conflict than meaningful contribution to galactic affairs. Now that backwater had answered. The transmission played on the holoscreen, a crackling but unmistakable Terran voice, calm and resolute. We acknowledge your distress signal, it said. Backup is en route. Expect arrival within 72 standard hours. Prepare to hold your positions. Silence. The Virellan Chancellor, a tall, translucent figure whose skin shimmered with shifting patterns, leaned forward. They offer ships. How many? The officer's fingers danced over the console. 13,000 warships, Admiral. The room erupted into disbelief. 13,000. A fleet that could rival the largest in the known galaxy, arriving not as a token force but in overwhelming numbers. Admiral Saren swallowed hard. Are they sure of this? They're certain. The message says they are going in full throttle. A low murmur rippled through the chamber. The Virellans prided themselves on diplomacy, research, and pacifism. Their fleets, while advanced, were more for defense and peacekeeping. They had never witnessed such raw, unrestrained military power focused on one goal. On the surface of Solaris Prime, in the crowded refugee camps, fear gnawed at the survivors. Mothers clutched children, veterans stared up at the sky, waiting for salvation or annihilation. Meanwhile, deep in Earth's orbit, the War Council convened. Admiral Jackson, a weathered man with silver hair and a scar running from temple to jaw, addressed the room with a grim expression. The Drakhi are not like any enemy we've faced. They are relentless. They consume everything, rewrite life itself. A younger officer interjected, Sir, this is our chance. The galaxy's counting on us. Jackson nodded slowly. This fight isn't theirs anymore. It's ours. A tactical hologram flickered to life, showing the route to the Andurian expanse, dotted with red blots representing the Drakhi advance. 13,000 warships. Jackson repeated, voice hardening. Every one of them crewed, armed, and ready for battle. We'll hit them hard, fast, and keep hitting until they break. Elsewhere, aboard a colossal Terran carrier, Captain Marissa Cole reviewed the fleet's readiness reports. The faces of her crew, young, determined, unyielding, stared back at her from the data feeds. Her comm chirped. Captain, sensors detect an unknown signature nearby, the XO reported. Possibly sabotage or an enemy scout. Cole's eyes narrowed. Keep me informed. We don't know what's waiting for us. Back in the Andurian expanse, Virellan scientists and strategists debated the risks of such a massive human presence. Some feared that humanity's unpredictable nature might provoke the Drakhi into even more ruthless attacks. Others whispered, cautiously hopeful, that perhaps this raw, fierce species was exactly what the galaxy needed. As the hours ticked, down the Virellan public watched the sky. The faint shimmer of slipspace engines ignited in the void. A voice echoed over all frequencies, clear and unyielding. Hold fast, backup is coming. And the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The Virilan war room was a swirl of whispered speculation and anxious debate as the first faint blips appeared on long-range scanners. Thousands of signatures clustering like a living storm at the edge of known space. The Virilan commanders exchanged uneasy glances. "This isn't possible," muttered General Catal, his eyes fixed on the hollow projection. "Even the combined, compact fleet has never deployed anything like this." The figure at the center of the room, Admiral Saren, held her ground. "It's no mistake. That is the Terran Armada. 13,000 ships, each one armed and crewed, entering slipspace. Within minutes of each other, they're here." Outside, through the reinforced viewing dome, the sky over Solaris Prime rippled as the first Terran vessels blinked into existence. Warships of every size and shape, sleek and brutal, bristling with weapon arrays. The fleets came in formation, a deadly tide that swallowed the horizon. Virilan soldiers stared upward, mouths agape. "Are these warships?" whispered a young recruit. "They look like monsters." The arrival was nothing short of apocalyptic. The Terran fleet commander, Admiral Marcus Lang, stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute, a massive battle cruiser at the vanguard of the Armada. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of unyielding. "Resolve, status report," he ordered. "Fleet operational, weapons online, shields at max," reported his tactical officer. "Scanners confirmed Drakhai swarm approaching. Estimated engagement in less than 6 hours." Lang's eyes narrowed. "We move on their forward hive core. We hit them hard and fast. No negotiations, no mercy." His second-in-command, Commander Lila Chen, nodded. "Our Black Lance Marines are ready for orbital insertion. Boarding teams prepped. The enemy won't know what hit them." But even as the Terran forces prepared for battle, a shadow stirred in the dark corridors of the Resolute. Captain Cole's voice crackled over the comms. "Admiral, we have an incident on Deck 42. Possible sabotage. Systems failing in several key compartments." Lang frowned. "Contain the breach. I want a full investigation immediately. This fleet can't afford weakness." The tension rippled through the Armada like a shockwave. Who could sabotage a fleet this size? The Virilans whispered fears of internal dissent. Perhaps even spies. But the humans responded with fierce discipline. Meanwhile, on the ground, Virilan leaders gathered in the command bunker beneath Solaris Prime's surface. The Chancellor's holographic form flickered as she addressed her council. "This human force is unlike anything we have ever known. They bring not only ships but a style of war that terrifies our strategists." A senior diplomat, Neerath, shook his head. "They speak openly of extermination. To us, war is a last resort, a tragedy. To them, it appears necessary." Sarin cut in, her voice sharp. "They do not negotiate with monsters, they destroy them. That is our hope." The diplomatic staff exchanged worried glances. The humans' bluntness clashed with centuries of Virilan restraint, but there was no time for cultural debate. The Drakhai were closing fast. Back on the Resolute, Lang stood beside Captain Cole in the command corridor. She handed him the sabotage report. "Systems are stabilizing, but it's clear someone tried to cripple our weapons array. We need to tighten security, fast." Lang nodded. "We can't afford distractions. Our target won't wait." As the Terran ships massed, an eerie silence settled over the expanse. Then from the depths of the dark, the first Drakhai war tendrils slithered into sensor range. Massive living ships that pulsed and writhed, bioengineered horrors with no concept of mercy. Lang's voice was steady, but his eyes were steel. "Battle stations. Let's show them why humanity fights." The fleet surged forward, engines blazing, weapons primed. Back on Solaris Prime, the Virilan citizens watched the sky transform into a theater of war. "Are they really going to do this?" a refugee mother whispered, holding her child close. The answer was written in the relentless advance of 13,000 human warships. The backup they had begged for had arrived, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The void before the Zero's belt was a swirling chaos of asteroids and fractured moons, prime nesting grounds for the Drakhai swarm's forward hive core. From orbit, the Virilan commanders watched with bated breath as the Terran fleet began their assault. Admiral Saren stood silently among her officers, eyes fixed on the hollow projection of the battlefield. The humans moved differently, fast, brutal, and uncompromising. Their warships didn't just circle or exchange fire. They struck with precision surgical enough to cleave through the biological monstrosities like a scalpel through tissue. The flagship USS Resolute launched its first salvo, kessels of kinetic projectiles streaking through space to detonate on impact, sending ripples through the organic hulls of the Drakhi vessels. The swarm shrieked in biosonic fury, lashing out with living tentacles and waves of acidic plasma. Then came the real terror. From the shadows of the fleet emerged the Black Lance drop marines, terrifying silhouettes in armored suits, descending in drop pods that punched through the atmosphere of the shattered moons with the roar of hellfire. They boarded the living ships of the Drakhi, stabbing through sinew and circuits alike, planting explosives that detonated in cataclysmic bursts of flame and bioneural feedback. Virilan officers gasped. "This is warfare?" one whispered. "Admiral," Saren answered, voice low but fierce. "This is survival." Suddenly alarms blared through the Resolute. The Drakhi were not passive prey. The hive responded with a psychic scream, a reverberating pulse that hacked into ship systems, scrambling sensors and jamming communications. The Terran AI networks fought back, a brutal digital duel flashing in the void. On the command bridge, Commander Lila Chen clenched her fists as the systems flickered erratically. "Status? We're losing targeting arrays. Electronic warfare is escalating," the tactical officer said. "They're adapting faster than predicted." Lang's jaw tightened. "Hold formation. Prioritize shields and manual targeting." Below decks, the Black Lance Marines fought with primal fury. Lieutenant Jackson Reed led his squad deep inside a living warship's core, the air thick with burning flesh and searing acid. The swarm's grotesque bodies writhed and hissed, but Reed's men moved like ghosts, silent, lethal, unstoppable. Reed gritted his teeth as a massive Drakhi beast lunged. He fired a plasma rifle point blank, sending the creature crashing into a wall of neural conduits. "Charge the core," he barked. Explosions tore through the ship's innards, the detonation ripping open a chasm that swallowed the bioship whole. Back on the Resolute, Lang's comm crackled with an urgent message. "Admiral, incoming transmission. Drakhi, Queen." The hollow screen shimmered, warping into a grotesque image, a colossal, many-eyed entity with a voice that echoed in the minds of all who listened. "Surrender your worlds. Join the hive. Or be devoured." A silence hung over the fleet. Then Lang's voice cut through the psychic menace. "Backup has arrived. We don't negotiate with monsters." The fleet roared to life, unleashing a torrent of fire that battered the hive cluster. Entire moons burned, reduced to cinders beneath relentless kinetic strikes and plasma blasts. But the cost was high. Dozens of human ships fell, ripped apart by the hive's counterattacks. The Terran fleet's formation wavered but never broke. On Solaris Prime, Virilan civilians listened to the battle's distant echoes through their comm links, explosions, screams, and the haunting silence between. A mother clutched her child, tears streaming down her face. "They fight like demons," she whispered. "But demons who protect." Admiral Saren watched the holoscreen, a rare flicker of hope breaking her stern demeanor. "They are not perfect," she admitted, "but they fight like none we have ever seen." As the battle reached its fever pitch, a sudden transmission flashed across human channels, an encrypted warning from deep within the Terran fleet. "Countdown initiated," the message read. "Hive Queen's psychic scream will crescendo in 45 minutes. Prepare for emergency protocols." Lang slammed his fist on the console. "Everyone, brace yourselves. This fight is far from over." The Terran fleet tightened its grip, bracing for the hive's last desperate gambit, and the stars held their breath once more. The battle had barely settled when a new and unexpected war began, not against the Drakhi, but within the Alliance itself. On board the massive Virilan command cruiser Vel Narim, Diplomats and military officers met in a tense chamber, its walls shimmering with holographic maps of the battle zone. The humans' brutal tactics were both awe-inspiring and deeply unsettling. Chancellor Eli Shan's voice was calm, but edged with concern. The humans' methods defy every tenet of our war ethics. Their attacks are ruthless, wanton destruction with no regard for biological life. Admiral Sarin, standing beside her, nodded slowly. They fight as if war is a means to an end rather than a tragedy to be endured. A human liaison, Captain Marissa Cole, folded her arms, her gaze sharp. Our species fights to survive. When the alternative is extinction, ethics become a luxury. The room's tension thickened. You attack living ships. You bombard entire moons without warning, protested Virilan General Katal, his voice rising. These acts could drive more systems into the Drakai's hunger out of desperation. Cole's eyes flashed. We didn't ask to be invited. We're here because you begged for help. We didn't come with terms or treaties. We came with war. Across the table, the Virilan diplomat Nirath sighed heavily. Your methods may save lives, but they risk shattering the fragile unity we have. Meanwhile, deeper within the human fleet, tension simmered in a different form. In the cramped corridors of the USS Resolute, Lieutenant Jackson Reed sat in the mess hall, cleaning his weapon. Around him, murmurs of discontent and fear rippled through the crew. We're fighting monsters, one Marine whispered. But sometimes I wonder if we're becoming monsters ourselves. Reed glanced up as Commander Lila Chen approached, her expression grave. We just received a report, she said quietly. A viral outbreak aboard the USS Valor. Unknown origin. Symptoms mimic the Drakai's bioinfestation. Reed's jaw clenched. Could it be sabotage? Chen shook her head. We don't know, but if it spreads, it could cripple the entire fleet. Back on Solaris Prime, the Virilan public's reactions were a mix of awe and fear. Some hailed the humans as saviors, fierce and unstoppable. Others whispered warnings about inviting a force they could neither understand nor control. In the council chambers, the Virilan chancellor considered the risks. Humanity is a wildfire. We may need that fire to cleanse this plague. But will it consume us as well? The political factions splintered. A rogue Virilan faction, embittered by years of pacifist restraint, began covertly sabotaging human supply lines and weapon systems, fearing the humans would eclipse their own place in the galaxy. When Captain Cole's security detail uncovered one such attempt aboard the Resolute, it sparked a volatile standoff. Why would you do this? Cole demanded, her voice cold. A young, Virilan saboteur caught red-handed replied bitterly, because your war will destroy us all. We fight for survival. You fight for dominance. The incident threatened to unravel the fragile alliance. Admiral Lang stepped in, his voice authoritative. We came to help, not to become enemies. If we fracture now, the Drakai will consume us all. But the divisions ran deep. As the viral outbreak aboard the Valor spread, quarantine protocols tightened. Crew morale plummeted. Lieutenant Reed volunteered to lead a strike team into the infected sectors to contain the threat. We can't lose the fleet from within, he said grimly. No matter what it costs. The humans and Virelans were caught in a tense balance, united against a cosmic terror yet divided by fear, mistrust, and their own natures. Amidst the turmoil, the Drakai prepared their own counterstrike, their Hive Queen's psychic roar still echoing across the void. The question lingered in every mind, human and Virelan alike. Could two such different species truly fight as one before the swarm devoured everything? Or would their differences doom them all? The Drakai swarm was no longer retreating. It was fighting back, and with a fury that shook even the hardened Terran commanders. From the shadowy depths of the Hive cluster, monstrous new horrors emerged. Hybrid warriors, towering grotesques, fused from captured alien technologies and corrupted life forms. Their sinewy limbs were armored with biometal plates, and their eyes glowed with a cold, calculating intelligence that sent chills through the fleet. They're no longer mindless beasts, reported Commander Lila Chen, voice tight with urgency. These hybrids are tactical, adaptive, nearly impervious to our conventional weapons. Admiral Lang's face darkened. This changes everything. We can't keep pounding with the same tactics and expect to win. In the command room aboard the USS Resolute, the Terran science team scrambled to analyze the new threat. Dr. Emil Ramos, the lead xenobiologist, stared at streaming data on his holo display. These hybrids are engineered to counter our plasma, disruptors and railguns. Their regenerative abilities render most weaponry useless. We're facing a biological superweapon. Lang frowned. Options. We're developing a viral countermeasure, Ramos said. A tailored pathogen designed to disrupt their neural pathways, but it's untested. Deploying it risks unpredictable consequences. Lang weighed the risks. We don't have the luxury of time. Begin production immediately. Meanwhile, deep in the heart of the Drakai hive cluster, the Queen stirred. Her many eyes reflected the flickering lights of approaching Terran ships. She hissed, a sound that vibrated through the very fabric of space. The Queen's psychic scream rippled outward, a haunting signal that summoned every fragment of her swarm. Her plan was desperate but brilliant, a black hole bomb forged from twisted technology scavenged from countless destroyed civilizations. Its detonation would collapse the hive core into a singularity, wiping out the Terran fleet and the swarm alike. The Queen's herald transmitted the warning in a cruel echo across human comm channels. Detonate the heart and all fall into oblivion. Admiral Lang's jaw clenched. If she blows that bomb, we lose everything. The humans prepared for a mission no soldier wanted, a suicide strike team to infiltrate the hive core and neutralize the bomb. Volunteers stepped forward, willing to face certain death for a chance at victory. Lieutenant Jackson Reed was among them. We can't let fear stop us now, he told his squad. This is what we fight for. Back on Solaris Prime, the Virulon Chancellor addressed the assembled commanders. The Terrans ask for sacrifice beyond anything we've seen. Are we prepared to follow them into oblivion? Admiral Saren's gaze was steady. We have no choice. To win, we must be willing to lose everything. As the strike team boarded sleek insertion pods, the fleet braced for the inevitable storm. The pods tore through the hive's outer defenses, crashing into the living walls of the core. Acid hissed and sinew writhed as the team fought their way toward the black hole bomb. Reed's voice was calm amid the chaos. Move fast. No mistakes. Inside the core chamber, a pulsating mass of twisted metal and dark energy loomed. The bomb, a horrific fusion of science and nightmare. The team worked feverishly, planting explosive charges to disable the device's containment fields. Suddenly, a monstrous hybrid warrior burst from the shadows, blocking their escape. Hold the line, Reed shouted, firing with precision. The creature howled in rage but fell beneath the barrage. With seconds to spare, the charges detonated. The black hole bomb's core destabilized, fragments of deadly energy cascading into the void. Outside, the Terran fleet felt the shockwave ripple through space. The hive cluster began collapsing inward, a dying star devouring its own heart. But the cost was severe. Several strike pods were lost in the blast, their crews swallowed by the abyss. Admiral, Lang's voice was grim as he addressed the fleet. We have dealt a crippling blow, but this war is far from over. Back on the Resolute, Dr. Ramos studied new data, revealing the first successful tests of the viral countermeasure. We may have a weapon that can turn the tide, he said, hope flickering. Lieutenant Reed, battered but alive, looked toward the stars. We'll fight until there's nothing left, because if we don't, no one else will. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for what would come next. The silence that followed the destruction of the black hole bomb was deceptive. Deep within the Terran fleet, a new battle raged, one fought not with plasma blasts or kinetic shells, but with microscopic agents that could turn the tide of the war or doom them all. Dr. Emil Ramos stood before a bank of consoles aboard the USS Resolute, eyes darting between streams of data. The viral countermeasure, codenamed Stormbreaker, was humanity's last hope against the relentless Drakai hybrids. Engineered to disrupt the neural network that bound the swarm, it was a weapon designed to shatter the enemy from within. Initiating deployment sequence, Ramos announced. The command bridge buzzed with tension. Admiral Lang watched the progress. Bars crawl forward as Stormbreaker's release protocols engaged. Once released, it spreads fast, the tactical officer warned. But there's no guarantee it won't mutate or cross-contaminate. Lang nodded. We accept the risk. Prepare. To launch the viral drones. Thousands of sleek biomechanical drones launched from the Terran carriers, their tiny forms darting into the black void between the ships and the shattered remains of the hive cluster. The virus they carried would infiltrate every Drakhi, vessel dismantling their neural cohesion. But as the drones swarmed, unexpected readings flickered across the sensors. The virus wasn't the only thing spreading. An unknown pathogen, a rogue mutation born from the Drakhi's own biology, began infecting human crews. The viral outbreak aboard the USS Valor was only the beginning. Medical teams are reporting new infections, said Chief Medical Officer Dr. Lara Voss, her face grim. Symptoms mimic neural collapse, disorientation, aggression, loss of control. Lang's expression hardened. Contain it. Quarantine protocols at maximum. No one leaves or enters infected zones without authorization. Lieutenant Jackson, Reed recently returned from the strike mission, found himself drafted to lead containment squads. The irony wasn't lost on him, a warrior who had faced death in the hive now battling an enemy within. As Reed moved through the dim corridors of the Resolute, the faces of infected crew members haunted him. Some snarled with rage, others were catatonic, lost to the viral storm raging inside them. In one quarantine ward, Reed's squad encountered a security breach. An infected officer had sabotaged containment seals, risking the virus's spread to the fleet. Reed barely managed to subdue the officer, a standoff that ended with a lethal shot and bitter silence. Meanwhile, tensions between the human and Virilan allies worsened. Virilan diplomats demanded that humans isolate their infected ships, fearful of contamination spreading beyond the fleet. Captain Marissa Cole faced increasing hostility from her Virilan counterparts. You must control your own before this plague infects us all, Chancellor Elishan's hologram warned during a joint strategy session. Cole's response was fierce. We're fighting a war on two fronts, against the Drakhi and against this virus. If you want us to hold the line, you need to trust us to do our job. The diplomatic standoff threatened to fracture the alliance at a moment when unity was most critical. As the viral outbreak escalated, Dr. Ramos worked tirelessly to develop a vaccine, racing against time and the virus's rapid mutations. In the lab's sterile glow, Ramos spoke with urgency to his team. Stormbreaker may be a double-edged sword. It's designed to disrupt Drakhi neural links, but in rare cases, it's crossing into human hosts. The discovery sent ripples through the command hierarchy. Deploying the viral countermeasure was a calculated risk, one that could save billions or doom the fleet to internal collapse. Back on Solaris Prime, the Virilan public heard only fragments of the internal crisis. Radio transmissions were heavily censored, but rumors of infection and sabotage spread like wildfire. In the refugee camps, fear gnawed at the survivors. The monstrous Drakhi threat had become a microscopic one, invisible but no less deadly. Amidst this chaos, Lieutenant Reed received a transmission from an unknown source, an encrypted message bearing the seal of a rogue Virilan faction, Yikiram, are fighting a losing battle. Our people cannot endure this human plague. There is another way. Negotiate with the hive. Reed stared at the message, the weight of its implications pressing down. Could the fragile alliance survive this viral storm, or was the war about to claim more than just lives on the battlefield? The USS Resolute was no longer just a warship. It had become a fortress quarantined against its own crew. The viral outbreak had turned once steady sailors into desperate, frightened shadows of themselves, while the threat of the Drakhi still loomed beyond the hull. Amidst the chaos, trust was unraveling, thread by thread. Lieutenant Jackson Reed stood on the bridge, staring out at the burning wreckage of a Virilan moon reduced to ash by the latest hive swarm assault. The calm he once had was gone, replaced by a gnawing doubt. A sharp chime interrupted his thoughts. The encrypted message from the rogue Virilan faction blinked insistently on his datapad. You are fighting a losing battle. Our people cannot endure this human plague. There is another way. Negotiate with the hive. Reed's fingers trembled as he accessed the message. It was signed by a name he had heard whispered in the corridors of Solaris Prime, Counselor Thalvek, leader of the dissident faction. Negotiations with the Drakhai, Reed muttered. The idea was poison to him. To bargain with monsters who sought to consume entire worlds? Unthinkable. But the message was a desperate plea, born of fear and exhaustion. The humans and Virulans were stretched thin, fighting enemies, inside and out. Later in the war room, Admiral Saren's face was grim as she addressed her officers. Our people suffer not only from the swarm but from our allies. The virus has fractured our trust. Thalvek's faction grows bolder, calling for peace with the hive. Chancellor Elishan's holographic image flickered beside her. Peace with the Drakhai is impossible, the Chancellor stated. They are a plague, a force of destruction. But if our own factions fracture, we will be crushed from within. Captain Marissa Cole leaned forward, voice sharp. We came here to fight, not debate philosophies. If the alliance breaks, the swarm wins. Reed found himself caught between worlds. The unyielding humanity that demanded victory at all costs, and the fragile Virellan hope for survival through unity and restraint. His communications officer interrupted with urgent news. Lieutenant, the rogue faction has taken control of a supply depot on Solaris Prime. They're arming civilians with captured Terran tech. Reed's jaw clenched. That's a declaration of civil war. As reports of sabotage and armed uprisings multiplied, the Terran and Virulent forces scrambled to maintain order. In the city streets of Solaris Prime, protesters clashed with peacekeepers, voices raised in anger and desperation. Reed was dispatched, with a joint human-Virulent squad to quell the uprising. As they moved through the barricades, the faces of civilians, fearful, angry, broken, etched themselves into his mind. During a tense standoff, a young woman stepped forward, holding a placard painted with a simple message. Survive at what cost? Reed lowered his weapon. This war is not just against the hive, she said. It's against the hatred between us. Her words echoed in Reed's thoughts long after the squad returned to the fleet. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Resolute, Dr. Emil Ramos worked frantically alongside Virulent scientists, racing to finalize a vaccine that could halt the viral outbreak without endangering the crew. The breakthrough came just as the latest swarm assault breached the fleet's perimeter defenses. Deploying vaccine drones, Ramos ordered. The fleet held its breath as the microscopic saviors spread through the infected zones, battling the viral storm at a cellular level. The infection's progress slowed, then reversed, a fragile victory, yet the wounds inflicted by fear and distrust remained. In a private meeting, Admiral Lang and Admiral Saren met face to face. We must bridge this divide, Saren said, voice heavy with regret. Our differences threaten to doom us more than the swarm ever could. Lang nodded. I'm willing to try, but humanity doesn't do well with half measures. They reached an uneasy accord. Joint patrols to root out sabotage, shared medical facilities, and a renewed commitment to the Alliance. But beneath the surface, the rogue faction remained a simmering threat. As Reed prepared for another mission against the hive, the encrypted message replayed in his mind. There is another way. He clenched his fists. He didn't believe in surrender, but he did believe in survival, and sometimes survival demanded the hardest choices. The darkness of space was shattered by a thunderous volley of plasma and railgun fire. The shattered remnants of the Drakhai hive cluster loomed ahead, still pulsing with malignant life despite the earlier devastation. The swarm's fury had not diminished. It had only grown more desperate, more ferocious. Lieutenant Jackson Reed stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute, the weight of countless lives pressing down on him. Beside him, Captain Marissa Cole coordinated the human and Virellan forces with a calm born of hard-earned experience. Enemy forces concentrating near the Solaris system's core, Cole reported. They're massing for a final all-or-nothing assault. Admiral Saren's voice crackled over the comm. Our fleets are ready to hold the line. This is our last stand. Reed glanced at the hollow map. Over 13,000 human warships formed a crescent around the hive, flanked by Virellan dreadnoughts and fighter wings. It was a force unlike any seen before, born from desperation and hope alike. Then came the chilling news. Rogue Virellan warships, aligned with Councillor Thalvek's faction, had launched attacks on both Terran and loyal Virellan ships. Civil war has ignited within our ranks, Admiral Lang's voice growled. We face enemies on two fronts. Cole's eyes narrowed. If we don't end this now, we lose everything. The final battle erupted in a storm of fire and fury. Swarms of biohybrids crashed against the human lines, their monstrous forms twisting and shifting with unnatural speed. The viral countermeasure had weakened the hive's cohesion, but not enough to stop the killing tide. Amid the chaos, Reed led a boarding team aboard a massive Drakhi mothership. Their mission: seize control of the enemy's neural command, nexus, and disrupt the hive mind once and for all. Inside the living corridors, Reed's squad fought through waves of terrifying creatures. Organic walls pulsed with sickly light, and the air thrummed with the hive's psychic scream. Reed's heart pounded as they reached the command core, a pulsating mass of neural tissue linked by shimmering biocables. Planting explosive charges around the core, Reed prepared to trigger the sabotage. Now or never, he whispered. The explosion ripped through the ship's interior, severing the hive mind's command. Across the battlefield, the Drakhi forces faltered, their relentless assault turning into disorganized chaos. At the same moment, a beacon lit up on the fleet's long-range sensors. It was a message broadcast by the rogue faction. Enough blood has been spilled. We propose a truce with the hive to save what remains. Admiral Saren's response was swift and firm. There is no peace with monsters. Surrender now, or be crushed. But Captain Cole saw a different path. We fight not just for victory, but for the future of two species learning to coexist. The rogue faction's descent, though dangerous, reminds us that unity requires more than weapons. It demands understanding. The rogue faction's ships paused their attacks, caught between rebellion and survival. With the hive's command shattered and its forces in disarray, the combined Terran and loyal Virellan fleets pressed their advantage. One by one, the Drakhi bioships erupted in violent death, their monstrous forms collapsing into drifting debris. As the battle waned, the surviving rogue ships lowered their weapons and sent envoys for parley. On the command bridge of the Resolute, Reed looked at the faces around him. Humans and Virellans alike, weary but alive. War changed us, he said softly, but it didn't break us. Admiral Lang stepped forward. We will rebuild, together. The Chancellor's voice came through in a solemn broadcast to all Virellan worlds. Let this victory remind us that survival is not achieved through isolation, but through unity. We fought alongside humanity, and we learned from them. Captain Cole smiled faintly. They asked for backup and we answered, and we, not just with warships, but with hearts willing to fight for a common cause. As the last embers of the Drakhi hive faded into the void, a new chapter dawned, a galaxy scarred but hopeful, where humanity and alien allies stood ready, not just to fight monsters, but to forge a future where cooperation was the strongest weapon of all. The war was over. The real journey had just begun.